I'm standing in my empty apartment in Bangkok, looking at baby clothes I never returned. The tags are still on them, small yellow onesies that say, "Mommy's Little Miracle" in English and Thai. I bought them 3 months ago, when I thought I was going to be a father at 64, when I thought Nalita was carrying our child, when I thought love could rewrite the mistakes of a lifetime. But the only thing she ever delivered was heartbreak, and I'm the fool who paid for the whole performance. Let me tell you how a retired elevator technician from Ohio became the mark in the cruelest con I've ever seen. It started with her hands on a stray cat in Lumpini Park, and it ended with her walking out of my life like I was just another job she'd finished. She told me she wanted children. She made me believe I was her last hope. And I gave her everything because I thought I was finally getting mine. This story came rushing back to me after an email landed in my inbox from a longtime viewer, someone who said they've been watching this channel since the first month it started. He wrote, "I used to think I was too old to be tricked. But the promise of family, that's the one lie I never saw coming." That line shattered me. I sat there for a long while, just staring at the screen, heart pounding. First came the disbelief, not at him but at myself. Then the quiet sting of recognition, because I knew exactly what he meant. When you've lived a whole life full of second chances that never arrived, the thought of starting over, of holding a child, of being called dad, it makes you forget to protect your heart. If you've ever believed in something that turned out to be a lie, especially when it felt like your last chance at meaning, then I hope this story brings you some comfort. Please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I read them all, and for those of you who keep coming back week after week, supporting through super thanks, quiet messages, or just by being here, thank you. You've made this space feel safe, like maybe we're healing together. Alright, let me take you back to where it all started. "You would make a great father," she said to me on our third date, her fingers tracing circles on my chest as we lay in my bed. I was still catching my breath, still amazed that this beautiful 30-year-old woman wanted anything to do with me. I can see it in your eyes when you look at children on the street. There's so much love there, waiting. I turned to face her, studying those dark eyes that seemed to see right through me. "Nalita, I'm 64 years old. That ship sailed a long time ago." She shook her head, pressing her palm against my cheek. "No, Ron, it's never too late for love to create life. I know this because I feel it too. The wanting, the emptiness, where a child should be." That conversation happened 2 weeks after I met her at the fertility clinic where she worked. I'd gone there after twisting my ankle badly during a morning walk, and the hospital directed me to their orthopedic specialist who shared the building. Nalita was working the reception desk, her English perfect, her smile warm but somehow sad. "Are you okay, sir? You look like you're in pain." I was limping, sure, but the real pain was deeper than any twisted ankle. It was the ache of a man who'd spent his whole life fixing elevators instead of building a family, who'd divorced at 58 because my wife said I was emotionally unavailable, who'd moved to Thailand hoping to find some peace in my retirement but found only loneliness instead. "I'm fine," I told her, but she saw right through it. She always did. "Let me get you some ice while you wait. And maybe some coffee? You look like you haven't been sleeping well." She was right. I'd been having the dreams again. The ones where I'm holding a baby that isn't mine, in a house I never bought, with a woman I never found. I'd wake up feeling like I'd lost something I never had. "Thank you," I said. And when she smiled, I felt something shift inside me. Hope, maybe. Or just the recognition of kindness in a world that had felt pretty cold. 3 weeks later, she was in my apartment cooking pad thai and telling me about her own dreams of motherhood. "I always wanted 4 children," she said, her voice soft as she stirred the noodles. 2 boys, 2 girls. I had their names picked out when I was still a teenager, Samchai and Kamun for the boys, Siraporn and Niran for the girls. I watched her from the couch, seeing the way her shoulders curved when she talked about those phantom children. What happened to that dream? She stopped stirring, her back still to me. Life happened, bad relationships, men who didn't want children or didn't want them with me. And now, she turned around, and I saw tears in her eyes. Now the doctors say it might be too late, that I need help, expensive help. That's when she told me about the fertility treatment she couldn't afford, about the consultation she'd had the week before, where they'd explained her options but quoted prices that made her laugh bitterly, $20,000, Ron. Maybe more. For a chance. Not a guarantee. A chance. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I work at that clinic every day. I see couples come in with hope and leave with babies, and I know I'll never be one of them. I got up from the couch and pulled her into my arms. She felt so small against my chest, so fragile. Money's just money, Nalita. Dreams are worth more than that. She looked up at me, her eyes wide. You can't mean that. We've only known each other 3 weeks. But I did mean it. God help me, I meant every word. The next morning, she moved some clothes into my apartment. Not everything, she said. Just enough to stay over more often. I gave her the larger closet, moved my things to make room for hers. She hung her dresses next to my shirts like we were a real couple, like we'd been building this life together for years instead of weeks. This feels right, she said, smoothing her hands over a blue sundress. Like coming home. I stood in the doorway watching her organize our space, feeling something I hadn't felt since I was young enough to believe in forever. I love you, Nalita. The words came out before I could stop them, raw and desperate. She turned to me, her eyes soft. I love you too, Ron. I love your kindness. I love how safe you make me feel. I love that you see a future where others see only problems. That night, we went to the clinic together so she could show me what the treatments would involve. Dr. Siraporn, the fertility specialist, walked us through the process. IVF is demanding, she explained, her voice professional but kind. Multiple rounds of hormone injections, careful monitoring, emotional stress. And with Nalita's particular situation, we may need several attempts. Nalita gripped my hand as the doctor spoke. But there's hope. I've seen women in similar circumstances succeed. It requires patience and resources, but it can work. When we left, Nalita was crying. I can't ask you to do this, Ron. It's too much, too expensive, too uncertain. But I was already reaching for my phone to call my bank. You're not asking. I'm offering. We're going to make this happen, Nalita. We're going to have our family. I transferred $15,000 that week. The first installment, Dr. Siraporn called it. Nalita cried when I showed her the receipt. No one has ever loved me this much, she whispered against my neck. No one has ever believed in my dreams the way you do. I held her tight, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling like the luckiest man alive. This is just the beginning, sweetheart. In 9 months we'll be holding our baby. She pulled back to look at me, her eyes shining. Our baby, Ron. Can you imagine? A little boy with your kind eyes or a little girl with my stubborn streak. I could imagine it. I'd been imagining it for weeks. A child who would call me Papa, who would crawl into our bed on Saturday mornings, who would make all those empty years worth the wait. The treatments started the following Monday. Nalita had to go to the clinic every few days for injections and monitoring. I drove her when I could, waited in the lobby while she met with the nurses. She'd come out looking drained but hopeful. Everything looks good, she'd tell me. Doctor Siraporn says my body is responding well to the hormones. At home, she'd show me the injection sites on her stomach, small red marks that broke my heart. Does it hurt much? I'd ask, and she'd smile. It's worth it. For us. For our future. I'd kiss each mark gently, whispering promises about the child we were going to love. But after a month, something started to feel different. Nalita began sleeping more, eating less. She'd cancel appointments at the last minute, saying the clinic had called to reschedule. They're very busy this time of year, she'd explain when I asked why. Lots of couples trying to conceive before the holidays. It seemed reasonable, but I'd worked in technical fields long enough to know when schedules didn't add up. When I called the clinic myself to confirm her next appointment, the receptionist sounded confused. I don't show any recent appointments for Kun Nalita, she said. Would you like me to schedule one? I hung up without answering, my hands shaking. That evening, I found a box of unopened fertility medications in our bathroom cabinet, expensive hormones that should have been injected weeks ago. When I confronted Nalita, she broke down crying. I couldn't do it, Ron. I was too scared, too depressed. What if it doesn't work? What if I disappoint you? What if I'm broken beyond fixing? I held her as she sobbed, feeling guilty for doubting her. Baby, we'll get through this together. Depression is normal with these treatments. Doctor Siriporn warned us about the emotional side effects. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. You still believe in me, even when I can't believe in myself? I kissed her forehead. I believe in us. We'll start again when you're ready. But the doubt had planted itself in my mind like a seed. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. How she never let me see her medical files. How she'd step outside to take certain phone calls. How she'd disappear for hours at a time, claiming to visit her sister or run errands but never inviting me along. One afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. She'd left for what she called a counseling session about the fertility stress, and something made me follow her. I stayed back, driving slowly through the busy Bangkok traffic, watching her silver Honda navigate toward a part of town I didn't recognize. She pulled into the parking lot of a luxury condominium complex. 20 stories of glass and steel, the kind of place where expat executives lived with their Thai wives. I parked across the street and watched her walk into the lobby like she belonged there. Confident, familiar. This wasn't the home of someone who worked at a fertility clinic for modest wages. I waited an hour before I saw her again, but this time she wasn't alone. A tall European man walked out with her, his hand on her lower back in a gesture I knew too well. He was younger than me, maybe 45, with the look of someone who worked in finance or tech. They talked quietly by her car for a few minutes before he kissed her cheek and walked back inside. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. When Nalita came home that evening, she found me sitting in our darkened living room. "Ron, why are you sitting in the dark? How was your day?" Her voice was cheerful, normal. The same voice that told me she loved me every night. "How was your counseling session?" I asked without turning on the lights. She paused in the doorway. "It was helpful. The therapist says fertility stress is more common than people realize." She gave me some techniques for managing the anxiety. I finally looked at her, studying her face in the dim light from the hallway. "What's her name? The therapist?" Another pause. "Dr. Malai. She specializes in reproductive mental health." The lie came so easily, so smoothly. "I'd like to meet her sometime. Maybe we could do a session together." Nalita shook her head quickly. "She prefers to work with patients individually first. Build trust. You understand?" I nodded like I believed her. "Of course. Whatever helps." That night she curled up against me like she always did, her head on my chest, her breath warm against my skin. "I love you, Ron," she whispered in the darkness. "I love how patient you are with me. How understanding. Not every man would be so supportive of a woman with my problems." I stared at the ceiling, feeling her heartbeat against my ribs. "What problems, Nalita? Tell me exactly what problems you have." She was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. "I'm damaged, Ron. Infertile. Difficult. Used goods, as they say here. You could find someone younger, healthier, more whole." Her voice was small and sad, and despite everything I'd seen that afternoon, my heart still broke for her. "You're not damaged," I said, stroking her hair. "You're the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me." But even as I said it, I wondered if the woman in my arms was the same person I'd seen walking out of that luxury building. The next few weeks were a careful dance of pretense. She continued to talk about fertility treatments while avoiding actually scheduling any. I pretended to believe her stories about clinic delays while quietly investigating what I'd seen. I drove by the condominium building several times, memorizing the address, wondering who lived there and what role they played in my girlfriend's secret life. I researched the building online and found rental listings that made my stomach drop. 2-bedroom units starting at $3,000 a month, more than double what Nalita claimed to make at the clinic. Someone was paying for her to live there, or at least to have access. Someone who wasn't me. I started testing her stories more directly. When she claimed to have appointments, I'd call the clinic to verify. When she said she was visiting her sister, I'd ask for details about what they'd done together. When she mentioned the fertility counselor, I'd request specifics about the sessions. Each lie became more elaborate, more creative. She had an excuse for everything, an explanation that made just enough sense to avoid a direct confrontation. But the foundation of trust we'd built was cracking beneath us, and I could feel the whole structure getting ready to collapse. The collapse started with a pregnancy test. Nalita brought it home on a Tuesday evening, her hands shaking as she showed me the 2 pink lines. Ron, I can't believe it. After everything we've been through, all the delays and setbacks, it happened. We're going to have a baby. I stared at the test, feeling a mixture of joy and confusion that made my chest tight. But you haven't been taking the medications. The treatments were suspended. She laughed through her tears. Sometimes nature finds a way, even when science fails. Dr. Siriporn says it happens more often than people think. The body responds to hope. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her shake against me. We're really going to be parents? She nodded against my shoulder. You're going to be such a wonderful father, Ron. Our baby is so lucky to have you. I spent that night lying awake, staring at the ceiling while Nalita slept peacefully beside me. Something felt wrong about the timing, about the sudden success after weeks of canceled appointments and unused medications. But I wanted it to be true so desperately that I pushed the doubts away. In the morning, I went to the baby store and bought everything I could think of. Tiny clothes and soft blankets, a mobile with dancing elephants, books about pregnancy and parenting. The salesperson smiled as I loaded my cart. Your first? She asked in English. Yes, I said, and saying it out loud made it feel real. My first, at 64. She raised her eyebrows but didn't comment. Congratulations, your wife is very lucky. When I got home with my purchases, Nalita was on the phone in the bedroom with the door closed. I could hear her voice but not the words, just the rhythm of a conversation that sounded tense, businesslike. When she came out, she was smiling again. Who was that? I asked, unpacking baby clothes on our bed. My sister. I told her about the baby. She's so excited to be an aunt. She picked up a yellow onesie and held it against her still flat stomach. It's so tiny. Hard to believe there's a person growing in here. I watched her perform the role of excited, expectant mother, and for a moment I almost believed her again. Almost forgot about the luxury condominium and the man who touched her back like he owned her. That weekend, she suggested we tell Dr. Siriporn about the pregnancy. She'll want to monitor me closely, make sure everything develops properly. It seemed reasonable, responsible. We made an appointment for the following Tuesday. But when Tuesday came, Nalita was sick. Food poisoning, she claimed, from street food we'd eaten the night before. I can't possibly go to the clinic today. I can barely keep water down. I offered to reschedule, but she shook her head. No, you go. Explain what happened. Get the prenatal vitamins she'll recommend. I trust you to handle it. So I went alone, carrying the pregnancy test she'd shown me, ready to share our good news with the doctor who'd been helping us. Dr. Siriporn looked confused when I showed her the test. Mr. Beckett, I need to be honest with you. Nalita hasn't been in for treatments in over 6 weeks. She canceled all her appointments and never rescheduled. If she's pregnant, it didn't happen through our program. I felt something cold spread through my chest. But she said you were monitoring her, that sometimes natural conception happens during fertility treatment cycles. The doctor shook her head gently. I'm sorry, but that's not accurate. Based on her test results, natural conception would be extremely unlikely without medical intervention, and this particular brand of pregnancy test. She paused, looking uncomfortable. Mr. Beckett, have you verified this result through a blood test or examination? I stared at the plastic stick in my hands. What do you mean? She pulled out her laptop and showed me a website. This brand is sold as a novelty item. It always shows positive results. People use them for pranks, for movie props, for... Her voice trailed off as she saw my face change. I'm so sorry. I think you need to have a very serious conversation with Nalita. I drove home in a fog, the pregnancy test burning like acid in my pocket. When I got to our apartment, Nalita was cooking dinner, humming softly to herself. She'd put on a loose dress that made her look pregnant if you were hoping to see it. How did it go with Dr. Siriporn? What did she say about our baby? I set the test on the kitchen counter between us. She said you haven't been to the clinic in 6 weeks. She said this test always shows positive results. She said you've been lying to me about everything. Nalita stared at the test, then at me. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something cold and calculating in her eyes. Then she laughed. Ron, you're being paranoid. It's just a backup test. I bought a few different brands to be sure. Don't you trust me? But I was done trusting. Show me your real medical files. Take me to your sister's house. Introduce me to your fertility counselor. Prove to me that any of this has been real. She crossed her arms, her expression hardening. I don't have to prove anything to you. Love isn't supposed to require evidence. I picked up the fake pregnancy test, holding it like a piece of broken glass. This isn't love, Nalita. I don't know what this is, but it isn't love. She watched me for a long moment, and I could see her deciding whether to keep fighting or cut her losses. You're right, she said finally. It's not love. It's survival. The word hit me like a punch to the stomach. Survival? She nodded, suddenly looking tired. I never wanted to hurt you, Ron, but I needed money, and you needed to feel useful. It seemed like it could work for both of us. I stared at her, this woman I'd thought I knew, this stranger wearing my girlfriend's face. The baby was never real? She shook her head. No baby. No fertility problems. No desperate need for family. Each word was a nail in the coffin of everything I'd believed about us. What about the man at the condominium? What about all the lies? She sighed. Marcus is my boyfriend. Has been for 2 years. He pays for the apartment. I pay the bills with money from men like you. It's not personal, Ron. It's just business. I asked her one last time if she ever loved me. The question came out broken, desperate, like a child asking if Santa Claus is real. She looked at me with something that might have been pity. I loved the way you made me feel safe, she said softly. I loved that you wanted to take care of me. I loved your kindness and your hope. But love and survival are not always the same thing. She went to the bedroom and started packing her clothes. The same clothes I'd watched her hang in our closet just months before, when I thought we were building a life together. What about the baby clothes? I asked stupidly, pointing to the pile of tiny outfits I'd bought in my excitement. She paused in her packing. Keep them. Maybe someday you'll find someone who really wants children with you. Then she walked out the door with her suitcase. No tears, no drama, no final goodbye. Just the sound of the lock clicking behind her. I stood in my empty apartment, surrounded by the evidence of my delusion. Baby clothes still in their packages, fertility medication bottles, bank statements showing $15,000 transferred to a clinic for treatments that never happened. I was trying to buy back time, I realized. Trying to purchase the life I'd never lived, the family I'd never built, the purpose I'd never found. At 64, I thought love could make me young again, could give me the children I'd never had, could fill the spaces in my heart that had been empty for decades. But all I'd bought was the performance of love, the illusion of family, the shadow of a dream that was never mine to begin with. I still live in Bangkok. I still wake up alone in the apartment where Nalita and I played house for 3 months. But I volunteer at an orphanage now, every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. I read to children who have no parents, help them with their English homework, teach them how to tie their shoes. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if she really did want children once upon a time, if the dream she described was ever real, or if it was always just another lie in a script she'd memorized. Either way, I tell myself it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I let the lie feel better than the truth for too long. I may have lost my future, but I still have today. And maybe that's enough for an old fool who finally learned the difference between love and loneliness. The children at the orphanage don't need me to be their father. They just need me to show up, and showing up, I've discovered, might be the only honest love I've ever known.